Good evening. This is a big story, and my name is Akisa Wandera. Tonight, nearly 5,000 delegates attending the first ever Blue Economy Conference being held in Kenya go to bed, an inspired lot following the advocacy exuded at the conference by various heads of government and heads of delegation. Simply put, the conference is meant to underscore water as an economic resource of untold magnitude. Not that it has not been, but the full potential of water bodies is far from being exploited. On the flip side, some sections of the blue economy are getting a beating, and a bad one. A case in point being the fishing piracy in the Indian Ocean and the ever-growing water hyacinth in Lake Victoria. But as pundits in the conference that started today in Nairobi say, the downside of the water economy will soon become history. But how soon? President Uhuru Kenyatta, who opened the conference today, also has a jumble of feelings about the lurking potential in the waters. Let's listen in.
By the enormous economic prospects of the blue economy. However, at the same time, I am also deeply concerned about the challenges of sustainable use of this critical resource. The blue economy binds us to a common destiny.
That was President Uhuru Kenyatta earlier on as he officially opened the Blue Conference. On the show tonight, I have a super panel consisting of Professor James Njiru, the director of Kenya Marine and Fisheries Institute at Camfrey, who's joining the show from our City Center studios. Edward Kimakwa, a marine expert from the World Wildlife Fund, is on his way. He'll be joining us shortly here on the show, as well as Sylvester Kasuku, the CEO of Lapsit Corridor Project. But before we hear from them, our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, is on standby with more on the blue economy, joining us live from the Intercontinental Hotel. Sophia, good evening.
Good evening, Akisa. So today, day one of that historical Sustainable Blue Economy Conference 2018, hosted by Kenya, convened by Kenya, of course, the co-host being Canada alongside Japan. And Kenya is touting this as a big deal, refocusing energy on this natural resource, be it rivers, you're talking about lakes, the oceans. Remember, a larger percentage of the Earth's surface is water. So it will be interesting to see how important is this in as far as the economy, GDPs, whether it's Kenya, other countries participating, and the whole world at large, but also the sustainability question, which is what you see as part of the title of this conference, is crucial because there have been those climate change effects that have been damaging, and we've seen whether it's plastic and the waste in these water bodies bringing a huge impact and detrimental to even the livelihood of the various, whether it's fish and mammals that we see inhabiting these water bodies. But tonight, to get more perspectives on just what this is all about, I have with me the Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary, Ambassador Dr. Monica Juma, with me. Thank you so much for making time for us. You must be exhausted. Must have been a busy couple of days for you, but thank you for being with us. Let's begin with breaking down blue economy. For the last couple of days, a lot has been heard and said about it. For a layman sitting back and hearing all about this, wondering, what is all this about blue economy? What's the fuss? Why now? And more importantly, what does it mean for me, Wanjiko?
Well, Sophie, thank you very much. Yes, we are tired, but happy tired. Happy tired because today we have proven yet again the capacity of Kenya to convene the world. The world has convened in Nairobi to discuss the next frontier of development. That is what blue economy is about. We have focused productivity historically on the land. And it is true that we have not attained sustainable development. We've not pulled everybody out of poverty. We've not been able to add to our prosperity. In the last couple of years, there has been a lot of discussions about sustainable development, that we've not utilized our assets properly in a way that they are regenerated. And that is why in the title of this conference today, we focus on sustainability. In other words, to regenerate. You have seen the clips today about how badly we are doing in terms of managing our oceans. They have become death places for animals. They have become death places for people in terms of making us sick. You have seen the heaps of plastics and a lot of terrible things happening. So this conference is about regenerating these assets so that it can provide for us food, it can provide for us employment, particularly for the societies that are along the coast. More than 50% of our cities on this continent sit on the seashore. And so we are talking about, and yet the communities in this seashore are invariably the poorest, you know. So something is wrong that we have these huge assets next to communities that are impoverished. And this is the question you are beginning to ask. How do we translate this asset into productivity? And so it is not just about protection, it's not about preventing the plastics and things like that. It is that, but it is also about productivity. Yeah. So this is what it means to people, to the common person, that we are leading the world in terms of thinking through and laying out strategies and convening so that we can have commitments that will create a rebalancing of nature, really. Rebalancing of our seas and water bodies, but also ensuring that we can exploit this in a sustainable manner.
So it's just day one. 8 heads of state, I believe, attending, quite a number of delegations, thousands of people that we've seen. Nairobi has been quite jam-packed in some hours of the day. But are there deals that have been locked, signed from today? Can you see any perspectives in the next days of this conference?
In fact, they have started to be locked. And let me tell you about the delegation. Our youngest delegate is an 8-year-old girl, who has been telling us the story of her planting trees and talking to her classmates about the blue economy and so forth and so forth. So, and in addition to that 8-year-old, we have 17,000 plus different people, scientists, researchers, innovators, private sector, women, youth, political leaders, diaspora, you know. Everybody has convened on Nairobi. And so in terms of talking deals, in fact, even the discussions between the leaders, the political leaders, we're already having discussions around lessons learned, around what lesson can we take from which country. Today we had Namibia talking about their capacity to even estimate the numbers of stock in the sea, their capacity to manage it. We heard about Seychelles, which a couple of weeks ago floated the first blue bond in the world. You know, so there are these lessons that people are already beginning to hear about and are beginning to get interested in. But tomorrow, Sophie, we are going to have the private and business forum. And one of the things that is going to be presented at this forum is a range of bankable projects. And so, yes, we expect some deals to be closed.
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the introduction, we have more percentage of water in terms of the earth's surface than land, and yet in terms of GDP and economy in Kenya and most countries in the world, it's land-driven. So are we saying with this kind of refocus on the blue economy, this could hugely impact on the GDP, or is it still a wild prospect?
The figures are very promising, and if you had listened to the initial presentation by the experts this morning, they had startling figures. In fact, this could double or even triple the GDP of the world. So yes, we have been focusing on land, but you have to know that there wasn't as much information as you are beginning to have now about the potential of the seas. We are talking about not just potential for food, you're talking about potential for generating energy. We are talking, you know, now drilling is mainly offshore. There is more oil and other things in the seas than they are on land. So you can actually use your land for other things and use the sea for something else. You will know more than 90% of the global merchandise travels through the waters. So the potential is huge. What has not been there is adequate scientific information. And what we've done, and in fact, since the president promised the world this conference 2 years ago, when we started discussions and sending messages to people, that was the question. Everybody would ask, so what's blue economy? Yeah. Why is it blue, you know? We have come from there to a point where everybody's talking blue economy because they have understood increasingly that you can multiply the opportunities here. It's about investment. It's about conservation. It's about new technologies. It's about industries. It's about inclusion. You know, it's about everything. It's about life. President Museveni summarized it very well. He kind of said, you know, in the beginning, I had a blue economy, thought it was a cliche. Now I'm wondering, why didn't you call this thing, this is about life? You know, because it is about the entirety of life. We are recalibrating our relationship with nature with a view to optimizing the benefits of nature for man.
All right, let's talk about one aspect of that blue economy, fish farming in Kenya. And Kenya has great tight ties now, especially with China, and there's that growing concern that the Kenyan market is flooded with fish. Fish farming in Kenya is being suppressed because of the lower prices of the Chinese fish. And we had the sentiment made by the president the other day around how to handle those kind of situations, so that for you as CS Foreign Affairs to deal on one hand with the relationship with China, but at the end of the day make sure our farmers, who we want to ensure they are also prospering, get to do that in an environment that doesn't antagonize our trading partners?
Well, you will know that fishing was never a big thing here, you know. But increasingly now, we are told even in Central Province, where people never originally ate fish, they are becoming the biggest producers of fish. So it is true that the fish industry is growing. You will probably know also that the government has created a separate state department that is focusing on fisheries. Now we are even focusing on maritime issues. Yeah, last Monday the president launched the Coast Guard. Part of that Coast Guard is really to look at and patrol our EEZ, so that we are able to manage and our fish stock is not taken away. Okay, that we can begin to land our fish on our coastline. That way you begin to create industries that can employ people, yeah? And that way you begin to push more fish in the market to dampen the cost for the mwananchi. Now, the matter you're talking about China, let me just correct you, Sophie. It is not true that we are very tight with China. We trade with everybody. And in fact, when you look at the portfolio of investment and trade with other countries, you will see it's across Europe, it's America, it's Africa. You know, we open our doors to everybody that is ready to do business with us, and that includes the Chinese. Now, the matter of the fish and whether they are being brought to our economy, the president raised this matter as a way of drawing our attention to the need to look at the balance of trade. And in fact, when we were in Shanghai, this was one of the big issues that we were discussing with the Chinese. And we are agreed that good trade is where there is parity, okay? And so one of the biggest discussions in Shanghai was, how do we access the markets, the growing Chinese market, with our purchasing power that can actually transform the Kenyan farmers, particularly for agricultural produce, where we are having a huge appetite for the things we grow because they are high quality. You know, they are high quality products. So that discussion has commenced. The Chinese are amenable to this. They understand this is good for both of us, and we have no doubt that we are going to be pushing a lot of products into the Chinese market.
Okay, let's talk about that dispute with Somalia over the territorial waters, the Indian Ocean, that is. It has been ongoing for some time now, even gone to litigation. Are you concerned that it's still an issue now? We saw the Somalian president was here as well. And what implication does it have, especially now talking blue economy, that two partners, neighbors, are still, you know, warring and in disagreement over the territorial waters?
Well, it is not unusual for neighbors to have disagreement on certain matters. What is important is the commitment, political commitment to resolve these matters, and I think both parties are committed to resolve these matters. That does not stop us from working together. Somalia is a very close friend of Kenya. We work on a range of many other things, you know, and even on this one, it is our commitment to continue working together and find an amicable solution.
What has been the implication of that ongoing dispute, would you say?
It has no implication because nothing is the matter now.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But then it's still a dispute.
Well, even in our homes, we have disputes all the time. Right. They don't stop us being family.
Okay. Because that also would remind, time and again, we in the media will cover about, again, another dispute with our neighbor, Uganda. Again, it's waters. It's the farmers, you know, and the fishing, the Kenya, the Ugandans as well. So would this also lead to a perhaps more expedient seeking of a resolution, if you like?
Well, you know, there are a number of conventions and instruments to deal with all this matter, particularly of transboundary resources, because they render themselves to being used across both borders. They are being used by people that have relationships. You know, there are people here, there are cultural ties, there are historical ties, there are economic ties. And so the idea is not to say there shall never be disagreement. The idea is to use those frameworks to resolve those disagreements, and that's what we are doing.
All right. Finally, there had been hope, and we want to get those insights from you, that this conference would be funded by the participants. The taxpayers would not have to bear that burden. So is the cost fully covered, or will you have to come back to say, hey, choteni kidogo?
Well, tell you what, I think part of the global consensus around this meeting was illustrated by the willingness to come together and support this agenda. It's probably one of the key indicators of the level of global consensus on the value of blue economy. And so we've had many countries and organizations that have come up to chip in. And so a lot of the cost of this conference has been borne out of fundraising we have done as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do we have any balances, or are we done?
We do not have any deficit. No, we don't. We don't.
Okay. So finally, what for you is your takeaway for every Kenyan watching? You have 2 more days to go, I believe, on the conference. What will be that thing that Kenyans will say we've benefited at the end of this?
Oh, Kenyans have benefited a lot. I mean, already we are having people who are saying they are going to stay longer. You know, we are having people who are making friends. We are going to have a lot of research projects and ideas coming out that will push this agenda, because knowledge production becomes very, very important. Today we've had leaders make firm commitments on what they are going to do to make this a reality. So it's not just a talk show. It's about how you're going to give it traction in terms of improving the lives of your people in your country, and also contributing to the global common vision, because this is not a territorial specific issue. You know, if you're talking waters, whatever somebody else on the eastern side of the Indian Ocean does, it affects us on the western side. So it is so important that all of us, if we grew that solidarity, and we are seeing it here. I mean, 183 countries, that is like a United Nations meeting anywhere. So it is really a real first global conference that is bringing us together. And that in itself is critical in terms of taking this agenda forward.
All right. Many thanks for making time for us.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. Ambassador Dr. Amina, I beg your pardon, Monica Juma, speaking with us this evening on the sustainable Blue Economy Conference. You see that banner there running from the 26th through to the 28th November 2018. And you've heard the importance of having all hands on deck on this one. It's not just about Kenya alone. It's everybody, because the implication of what actions are taken in this side of the coast could impact on a different coast. So we'll be watching the developments, KICC, and of course reporting on the same as the conference continues. Back to you.
Sophia, thank you. Back in studio, of course, the conversation here with our guest once again. Professor James Njeri is the director of the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, is joining us live from our City Center studios. We have Mr. Edward Kimakwa, who's a marine and fisheries expert from the World Wildlife Fund, or WWF, is joining us from here in studio. And finally, Sylvester Kasuku, the CEO of LAPSET. Gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for joining us here tonight. I'll start with you, Professor James Njeri, being the director of the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, or KEMFRI. Of course, you have all the figures. How would you describe how Kenya is currently faring as far as the utilization of its blue economy is concerned?
First, I would like to thank you for having me on KTN.
Yes.
I think my first time to be live on KTN, and I hope I'll be of good behavior.
We hope so too. Yes, carry on.
In terms of fisheries, Kenya currently is not doing very well in terms of exploitation of its resources. We've got enormous resources out there which we have not been able to exploit. First and foremost, I wish to thank first the government of Kenya, especially through His Excellency the President, for giving us resources in terms of trying to estimate the biomass and the resources we have in the ocean. Currently, what we get from the ocean is about 26,000 metric tons. But through the results from our several surveys, we have found that we are able to get almost to a tune of 500,000 metric tons or above from our waters. As you see now, we are only exploiting 26,000 metric tons, so there is enormous potential which we have not exploited.
What are some of the reasons why we have been unable to exploit these resources over the years, given the abundance that we have?
Enormous potential. Well, it requires resources. Most of our fishermen are what we call artisanal. They normally use the small boats, so they are not able to go very far. A few kilometers offshore the waters of Kenya. And they don't have big, for Lema, they don't have big ships, which would enable them to be able to go far much deeper. To outline, Kenya as a coastal or a marine state has got an area of about 142,000 square kilometers of water. If this one is extended through what we call the enclosed, we are able to get another 100,000 or so square kilometers. This makes a total of 245,000 square kilometers. Wandera, that's about 42% of our land mass. Kenya land mass is about 580,000 square kilometers. So it's enormous land out there, but our fishermen are not able to reach there because of the kind of boats they have, Wandera.
So then how do we handle this situation with the current conference going on in Nairobi and Kenya being alive to the fact that it has been underperforming in this particular industry? As the director of KEMFRI, what are some of the things we're putting forward as suggestions to how we can, deal with this situation?
Thank you very much. Again, I think this is a very opportune time because this conference brings partners together so that now we are able to, as a group, come together. As Kenya Marine, we have been able to estimate what is out there. So now we are able to have policies and able to inform government of the kind of resources we have. So now investors will be listening to us since today and tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are able to know exactly what we have in terms of resources in Kenya. And they are able to come and assist us.
Okay.
So that we can invest as a group, as a country, with our partners.
All right. Mr. Kimakwa Edward, you are an expert in the field of marine, and you're part of the team in WWF that has done major analysis on the ocean economy, both globally and in the region. Just talk to us about where Kenya is in terms of the region as far as the blue economy is concerned in comparison with how other countries are faring.
Thank you very much for hosting me on the studio. I know we have been meeting out there and talking more about ocean economy. Globally, we are talking about 24 trillion US dollars if you look at the ocean economy in terms of the ocean assets. And as an organization, the Worldwide Fund for Nature, we have been doing some work together with our partners to put value, to put some figure in terms of what the value of our ocean asset is. And globally, we are talking about 24 trillion US dollars. And if you can translate this into what you call global marine product, an equivalent of GDP, globally we are talking about 2.5 trillion US dollars. We have gone further to do some analysis in the Western Indian Ocean region, and looking at the ocean assets within the Western Indian Ocean region, encompassing countries including Kenya, Mozambique, Tanzania, Mauritius, South Africa, Seychelles, Comoros, and the Union, you will see that is to the tune of 333 billion US dollars. And this translates to what you call global marine product in terms of annual returns. If you can compare to the equivalent of GDP, it comes to about 20.7 billion US dollars. We went further and looked at what Kenya has in terms of that share. It's not really much. It's about 2.4 billion US dollars. And much of this is coming from coastal tourism, about 1.5 billion US dollars. So that gives you a global perspective, a regional perspective, and the national perspectives in terms of the value of the ocean assets. Definitely, this is underestimation because we may not have all the details, but roughly that's the figure that we have currently, and this is in the public domain. We have these reports that are available to the media as well.
From the estimates, it seems like Kenya is lagging behind as far as the ocean economy is concerned. As experts in this particular field, what recommendations are you giving, looking at what we are doing now, what we have failed to do? What do we need to be doing right now to ensure that we get a larger share of the ocean economy globally?
Yeah, obviously, one thing that we have to recognize in this country is that we do not have a comprehensive, sustainable blue economy policy in this country. And also, we recognize that His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, established the State Department of Fisheries and the Blue Economy. And that's a very good step forward. There's also a committee on blue economy, mainly which is inter-agency, bringing together different government institutions. We want to see a situation where this country develops and implements a sustainable and comprehensive blue economy policy, together having the legal policy and institutional frameworks in place to tap on that potential.
All right.
We also need to invest in terms of the capacity. I think you have heard from Professor Njiru mentioning to you that in terms of capacity for us to venture into the deep sea is quite very limited, and we need to build that capacity for our fishermen to get into the deeper waters. Currently, as it is, we provide some, as a countries, we license this what you call foreign fishing fleets to come and fish in our waters, for example. Infrastructure, that has also to be developed. If you compare Kenya with the countries like Seychelles, for instance, in terms of the infrastructure, if you look at Mauritius, if you look at the infrastructure that associated with tapping on the ocean-based economy, I think we have a long way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we talk about infrastructure, we know the LAPSSET project, corridor project, is currently ongoing. Mr. Kasuku, you're the CEO of this particular project. Just recently, we saw President Uhuru Kenyatta launch the Coast Guard service, and we know we're on phase 2 of completing the 2 berths. I think it's 2 berths at Lamu West, at the Lamu port. With the launch of this Coast Guard service, what does this mean for Kenya and the entire project that you're heading?
Thank you very much, Akisa. First and foremost, we do understand that global urbanization and industrialization have been driven from coastal settlements, or have been driven from coastal regions. And if you've got a coastline that you cannot secure and then you cannot check on and make sure that you know how to tap the resources, then you would really be wasting that particular resource. What we are doing as a government now, through the launching of the Coast Guard, is actually coming to a greater realization that the resources based at the coastline really have to be harnessed and have to be managed and must really be guarded. And from the LAPSSET side, we've been really at the forefront of letting the country and the world know that we are having great resources just lying at our coastline that we need to tap, right from building wild-scale ports of the nature of Lamu that we are building today, which is the largest port on the east coast of the African continent, and by any proportion larger than many ports, or maybe among the largest in Africa and globally, that is. And also connecting that with infrastructure to connect to the hinterland.
Okay.
Both hinterland in Kenya and hinterland to the other countries is indeed something that is ushering in a new economic era.
All right. We're getting back to you shortly with more details on the impact of the blue economy and the connection it has to the LAPSSET project that is currently ongoing. That's the CEO of LAPSSET. Let's take that break here on The Big Story. We're still coming back with that conversation and more. Stay with us.